Help Save Our World, Speak 62. The transition continued. Hello and welcome to our 60-second Help Save Our World Speak online speakers meeting, where we are changing the conversation to change our world. I'm Dennis, the teacher of this quest for the truth, change, and transformation. We and our world are dying. All life on planet Earth is racing towards extreme suffering and inevitable extinction because of our civilized way of life. We are creating imbalance and instability in all of our life-sustaining systems. We, the people of the world, have been misguided and lied to by those people in power. This misguidance has caused us to harm ourselves and destroy our once life-sustaining planet. Now, your only hope is for you to go on a quest for the truth so that you can change and transform your life. By traveling through this thought journey, you'll awaken yourself to the truth, become aware, more conscious, and enlightened. Thus, you'll make wiser choices and change your way of life. Then just by living that way of life, you'll naturally change the world that you manifest around you. Your quest for the truth will empower you with the knowledge, the skills, and the natural wisdom that you need to think clearly and choose wisely. Then, leading from the front, you will guide, teach, and lead others towards a happy, healthy, and sustainable way of life, which will ultimately spread around the world so we can all help save our world and Mother Earth together. So let's start with introductions. I really like your background, Brendan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I will indeed. Well, speaking of the background, as you can see, this is my walk to freedom or a sustainable way of life. But yeah, I am Brendan. I'm from South Africa. I am part of this organization in order to, or part of this group, should I say, not so much an organization, to help prevent further destruction in the world and to help people understand that if they don't change their way of life, they're going to have no life in the long run, as well as also bring sustainable eco-villages to the world.
Excellent. Thank you, Brendan. Kurt?
Hi, I'm Kirk. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at the moment. In my car, and I'm driving to a sustainability and help save the planet day at a local park. And I'm here because I continue to care about the earth I live on. And participating in these sessions helps me to learn a new thing at least every time. And contributing helps me better understand what it is that I'm thinking and what I'm up to.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kurt. Just an apology. Alex is not feeling very well. She might be listening in, but she's not going to actually participate because she's really not feeling well today. So let's start with continuing with chapter Violet, which we are dealing with the concept of the transition, that journey across the bridge from the old paradigm to the new. Our question today is, how are you making a stand? Now, this is not a judgment, so don't take it personally or anything like that. Now, I know that you are making a difference and changing your way of life just by being here. You're also making a huge difference in our world and making a stand in many other ways. This question is not to put you on the spot. I'm just giving you things to consider from my stories to think about and discuss. My question here is, do you stand for love? Do you stand for equality? Do you stand for kindness, fairness, caring, sharing, mutual respect, balance, harmony, life, ecosystems, ecology, all life, microorganisms in the soil, to all of life on the land? microorganisms in the oceans, to plankton, to rivers, all of the microorganisms and fish and life in the rivers, to all life, and ultimately our living planet. Do you stand for that? Do you stand up for what is just and fair in your society, your community, your tribe, and the unprotected individuals from all forms of life? Do you stand up for the weak and the meek and the mild, and the people who are not strong enough to fend for themselves? What do you stand for? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell a story of how I decided not to stand in a certain situation where I had previously stood, but it just sort of gives some broader perspective on this idea of where do you stand. So let me tell you a story about the reasons why I left Toastmasters. Now, before I begin, I would like to remind you what I said last week about being personally responsible for my thoughts and my feelings and my actions, and not taking anything personally and letting others affect me. Recently, I gave up speaking online in Toastmasters meetings. And okay, before I start today, I just want to make it clear that most Toastmasters were exceptionally kind, giving and supportive people, especially in the two clubs where I chose to speak. However, even there was always an underlying, unspoken undertone within American society that no one is willing to speak about or deal with publicly. These unresolved sick societal problems affected me, and soon I began to feel ill and stressed dealing with some of the members. These members were either unthinking, religious, patriotic, biased, racist, and supportive of the warring and murdering, plundering military. But more unwittingly sinister were those who went along with the standard institutionalized behavior without a second thought of stepping up and saying anything. None of them had the strength of character to refuse to be part of the problem or show their dissent by not supporting it. In most cases, it was not knowing where they stood, which was the scariest thing to me. Although it was encouraging to speak to a few people outside the meeting environment who could hear what I was saying, but even they did not or would not stand up and say anything during the meetings. This silence reminds me of the few American sportsmen and women who had the strength of character to stand up against racism, taking a knee in sports arenas in protest against systemic racism and police violence while the anthem was playing. They stuck to their behavior even when the owners and the media and general population rebuked them. Some arguments against them, just watching a bit of the media reporting from the talking heads, it's unpatriotic, un-American. It's a time-honored tradition. They should be standing in support of our country's values. Now, I see none of these calls to patriotism as acceptable excuses for supporting a system that is so steeped in hate and fear. Like pre-programmed robots, most Toastmaster members put their hands on their hearts and stood for the flag, or stood, I don't, some sat, stood for the flag at the beginning of every meeting and said the Pledge of Allegiance, showing their loyalty to the systems of segregation, racism, xenophobia, hate, and murder that is killing our world faster than anything else has ever done in human history. My meeting thoughts were, can't they see patriotism is the foundation of segregation, fear, hatred, violence and wars. Can't they see that? Don't they see we're all one? Don't they know walls, borders, and fences are abstract divisions created by men for power and control and to maintain their wealth and power, and are meaningless in the natural world? Can't they see we are all part of a whole world, galaxy, and universe? We breathe the same air, drink the same water. We come from the same original 4 ancestral mothers in Africa, which migrated around the world. Well, not them, but the populations of human population that developed from there spread around the world. We come from nature and the consciousness of the universe. We are one with Mother Earth in one connected, living, giving, nurturing, and life-sustaining universe. Don't they see patriotism is an imposed and enforced form of segregation? Thus, it's one of the biggest causes of imbalances and inequality in our world. It's the foundation, ultimately, of inequality, imbalance, and planetary destruction. Feeling the pain as I sat there silently, I looked at them. I looked the other way as they pledged allegiance to the flag. The next thing that affected me was the hardcore religious believers making religious quotes and statements. I don't attend religious meetings for a reason. Many religious beliefs are the foundations of our world's problems, and segregation being one of them, on which patriotism comes. My thoughts, I can only imagine that a few who know the truth have chosen not to offend the others or to make any waves. They'd rather make themselves small or play the game just to be accepted by their peers. Or are they just unwilling to rock the boat? Maybe it's because of their fear of speaking up, attracting attention, ostracism, rejection, and isolation. Then I began to realize the extreme effects of their years of indoctrination, education, governments, media, movies, religions, and so on. Then I thought how long ago they must have chosen to make those decisions, and maybe even forgotten about them, and accepted that this was just their habitual way of life, the life they were living and unquestioningly perpetuating. It's just the way it is. In my mind, this societal sickness had begun to affect me badly in Toastmasters meetings. I had progressively stopped speaking my truth. I started being unable to even participate in table topics or any other roles, even to give speeches. I lost my confidence. I started to become fearful of judgment. It was as if I was talking to a judgmental wall. I began to feel stressed, ill, and uncomfortable because of what I perceived to be judgment from the indoctrinated. Right or wrong, that was my feelings at the time. Because of having to deal with this pervasive sickness, the ignorance and the snide remarks, which were disguised in humor, making it worse, I decided to leave Toastmasters online meetings. Leaving was not my usual course of action. Other people's prejudices usually don't affect me at all. I typically stood my ground and spoke up, even if I did so at great expense to myself. I brought about significant changes in one of my previous clubs by speaking up about this particular topic. And we never did the Pledge of Allegiance from then onwards. Speaking up for the homeless against someone's ignorance also got me blocked from that previous club, which I was a member of the WhatsApp group, but I wasn't actually a member of the club. So it's interesting how sometimes that speaking up will cost you, but are you willing to pay the price? This time, however, I had to choose my battles, even though this time I let the circumstances, unconscious mind, and fears control my thoughts and actions. Now the question comes to mind, maybe that's how they felt, the rest of the people in the club. Maybe they felt like all of these irrational fears. Now, this irrational emotional response has become one of my challenges to overcome in my transition. I now have to deal with this. I also know I'm going to have my moments of weakness. Of course, I think that happens to everyone. But I have to see them, deal with them, and rethink my best choices and courses of action to master my mind and my life. Then practice standing up for what is right, never giving up on the best I can be, and just doing the best I can to help save our world. I'm going to stop here, and this will carry on when everyone else has had a chance to say something if they wish. Kurt?
I'm going to state that everybody on this call has probably had a moment where we had that wake up and just decided not to play the game anymore. So I can appreciate the stand that you took then, and also the almost visceral reaction you had when you became aware of the toxins that you were living in and decided this is not the environment for you to thrive in. And I don't consider it running away. I consider it getting to a place of safety so that you can heal. And I think we are all at that point somewhere in our lives, and many of the world's population are experiencing that right now. That the old systems, the old environment, the old habits, the old unthinking programming doesn't serve them anymore. So that's why we're on this call.
Yeah. It's just like, I think the question is here is really acknowledging them. It's like within your mind, it's like, oh, okay. I really have been unhappy with the political situation in the country, but am I talking about it? Am I like stepping up and saying something to somebody, anybody, just even if you talk to your dog, just practice doing it, eventually a human might hear you, and then you've made a difference, Brendan?
Yeah, I believe in taking a stand for what you believe in. But not only that, I also believe in taking a stand for, number one, the people that need help, and number two, the people who are close to you. For example, i.e., family or good friends, people that will have your back if you have their back and when you need help. For example, if someone take the other day when we went out and we went to my work and that woman was giving you trouble, I took a stand and I defended you because you were not in the wrong. I mean, if you're in the wrong, I'm going to say, hey, listen, this is your own doing. But if you're not in the wrong, I'm going to take a stand, and defend you.
And that's really appreciated. It's like, and if you always like live by a good set of values, and everything you think, say, and do is ultimately to benefit others, I think that's taking a stand within itself. It's like when people start saying things that are just like outrageous, and you're like, I'm sorry, but I don't accept that. I think that's like a really important part of standing. And then if you have others around you who defend and protect you, I mean, that's awesome. That's ultimately where we need to go. It's like when everyone starts to stand and start to say something and start to do something, then change happens. Kurt, you want to comment on that?
So no, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, and if not when everyone gets to stand, it's when a critical mass of enough people take a stand. We can also change. So it's continuing to gather in and align with others to help change what's going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like as I was going along, the next thing that came up was I actually fell asleep after like going through the final edit on this, and I woke up and these thoughts, like three thoughts, were like coming through in my sort of unconscious, subconscious state. The first one was only changing creates change. So it's only when we step up and create the change, like change ourselves possibly, that change happens. And then the next one was only spreading, growing, and maintaining the long-term knowledge and growth of life will ensure the future permanence. So it's like, you know, I think of rocks with etched wisdom in it from an ancient past. And then I think of institutionalized thought and books and whatever, all of these things like that ensure the longevity of a civilization, because you could have a period of time where there's just warring and murder and plunder and whatever. What have you created that will have longevity and live through that to a future time? And I think, you know, how can we create that permanence? Sustainable eco-villages is an idea, you know, in that we actually create, manifesting a real existing thing that will help perpetuate or institutionalize our values to be able to go on into the future. And then the third one that came up was our future lies in the long-term relationships we create. And like, that's like an incredible thing. It's like, it's having children to ensure that your values and beliefs and your bloodline runs on. It's like, it's having like grown ecosystems that live on in food forests like the Amazon jungle into the future. And it's like, how many thousands of years later, after they actually grew those as literally like sustainable ecosystems. And there's a lot of proof that is true. In certain regions, they've used human manure over large areas, sort of like the size of France, actually, where they've actually been using human manure to actually grow the ecosystems. And so from a hierarchical pyramid scheme civilization, they moved into a sustainable ecosystem type civilization. And that lived on with permanence because of the relationships to nature, to the plants, to the trees, to the birds and the beasts. It's like to the water, to everything. And that became a healthy, happy ecosystem, sustainable system. So what are we doing to create that? So it's just like these thoughts came in my mind. So the question is, what systems are we putting in place to ensure sustainable permanence? So when I was writing this section, this concept comes up. Sometimes the decisions and choices we have to make aren't easy, but often life is a way of making us choose or choosing for us. Simultaneously, as having to make the Toastmasters choice, many significant changes began happening in my life, which also influenced my choice to stop attending. The first one was my estranged brother died, bringing home to me how short and how precious life is. And we only have one shot at getting this right. I also had a lousy stomach hernia, which incapacitated me. I also reconnected with an old friend who reawakened me to many of the fundamental principles on my transitional thought journey. At the same time, also began this new chapter, which we're working through now in Help Save Our World Speak journey, the transition. I was experiencing too much stress, emotional distress, and the changes overwhelmed me. I became exhausted and depressed. COVID added on to that, I suppose. So I slept and reevaluated and reset my life. It was as if this synchronicity of events guided and led me back into alignment with my purpose, and that is to help save our world. I was reawakening to my life's purpose and receiving clarity about what we are trying to achieve. I had also begun to think about writing, realizing that I had spent too much time and energy consuming work, preparing Toastmaster speeches with little to no effect. I had to remind myself that everything I do has to be effective on my journey because I only have one lifetime and life is short. So I had to stop and reevaluate how I spent my time and decided to refocus and choose a more direct path. Writing and creating books and teachings would be a better use of my time because they have longevity as opposed to passing speeches. They were the answer. It's like this as well. What we're doing here is we're creating permanence of this conversation, of the knowledge, of the interactions, which have longevity. So we're institutionalizing these meetings for future generations to see. But technology doesn't usually survive rises and falls of set civilizations. So if we could go and chisel us all into rock, I think it would have a chance. But video and technology, that changes, and technology changes, and programs come and companies come and go. And how do we make this into permanence? Well, I think if we take the writing and we turn it into books, it has a better chance of surviving. And then maybe hermetically sealing those books and putting them in cold storage in the ice caps. I don't know. There has to be a way of ensuring permanence. To me, the transition is about saying no more to what is not working and making radical changes in your life, no matter how hard they are, no matter how many friends you lose, no matter what other people think, say, or do, and how much you might suffer for becoming the person you choose to become. It is about becoming more considerate, kind, caring, loving, living your authentic life and being true to your word. Transitioning means losing some unhealthy relationships and changing yourself to make other friends on the other side. It's like having a faith in a belief that, there is a better future. And if we all strive towards it, we will eventually all end up on the other side of the bridge together after the chaos. The transition to me is living by your vision, your core ideas, your values you have learned. And it's about raising awareness of what we need to change, what's essential for our existence and our requirements to transition. It's about putting yourself out there and raising awareness of all of the biased ideas, untruths, lies, deceptions, harms, and wrongdoings. Standing up and speaking out. We encourage others to stand up for what is right, encouraging them to live truthfully and in love, balance, and harmony with our world. If you do not stand up and speak up, who will? If not you, who? If not now, when? All right, open to the floor. Anyone want to say something? Kurt?
Yeah, I certainly agree with that point. We need to take action when we have the body and the energy and to do it. We don't know what our actions ultimately will lead to. However, if we've thought about and experienced life in a connected way with the earth and the planet and nature and the people on it, I would say that our choices would be towards making it a better place than trashing it. So I think if not me, who, and if not now, when, are very important points. It doesn't mean that everybody has to take it on as their only purpose in life. However, when we live out of that as a guiding principle, I think we'll tend to operate on the planet in ways that support that concept rather than take away from it.
That's awesome stuff. Brendan?
I agree with you guys 100%. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. You guys have made very good points. I can't really add much more. But yeah, 100% agree.
Awesome.
If I can,
Darren?
I just want to champion Brendan a little bit. Brendan, you're living that life right now in your choices and what you're doing, right? Where you live and the activities that you do. Even your job is somewhat related to it. So I just want to acknowledge you that you are doing it now, and I appreciate that commitment from you.
Yeah, you know that just the idea that Brendan, like literally in this last year, has just like been coming on video, and well, not even the last year. It's just like a short period of time, and adding to the conversation and adding really meaningful comments. And when he doesn't want to or doesn't feel up to, or there's whatever, it's perfectly fine not to say like, okay, I'm sorry, but that's I don't have a comment now. And I do tend to drop this on you. I'm going along and everyone's happily listening, and then all of a sudden, bam, speak. And that's pretty tough for anybody to deal with. So I am very, very, pleased that the fact that he's here and he's like changing his life in so many ways. He's doing amazing things out there. So, and he's out there in the real world, like speaking to people every day, where I'm like just in here writing speeches and doing this presentation. He's out there interfacing with people and talking about these things every day. So he's more than likely growing a hell of a lot faster than both of us put together, So yeah, it's wonderful to have you part of our meetings and so on. So there's a little bit more of this section, and then we can do our little discussion and wrap up. Always remember that you have the power to make a profound difference in our world. But the majority of people are ancestrally influenced and curled up in fear, thinking they are alone in all of this. It's like, and a lot of people are caught up in, oh, my father did this, and my parents did that, and my grandparents did this. So this is the way I need to live my life because they were successful. So this will work out for me. Unknowingly, not realizing that this is like a short-term taking, destructive value and belief system that is not sustainable. It's like we live on a limited planet, we're over-consuming, there will be nothing left in a short period of time. It's just like we will have destroyed it before we know what's going on. But now for the generations from, say, the ones who were forced through wars and violence and whatever into the civilization and then lived in that civilization, there was a huge amount of taking and gain and wealth, and that might seem like the best train to ride, but when we start to run into a lack of or insufficiency or like the destruction of the planet, that's not a sustainable way of living. And I was just listening to Jeff Lawson. I've been going through his permaculture design course, and he says, and I was also watching, the Japanese wars, the wars of the samurai, or whatever. Like for 100 years, these various groups or gangs or whatever are fighting for power and killing and murdering one another, and it's just absolute destruction right across the whole continent. And I'm looking at that and thinking about what Jeff Lawson said, and he said, there's only one war, and that's the war for survival of our planet and all life on it. And ultimately, that has been actually the war of those who want power and to take and to plunder, fighting against the people on the land, taking and plundering what was everyone's. So that has always been the only war. But now, as the people of the world, we should realize that the only war that we should all be fighting for is the survival of Mother Nature, the survival of Mother Earth, and the survival of all life on the planet. We should be fighting together for the survival of life on this ball flying through space. Our war should be together forever. So, of course, many feel the sickness in their gut and the dread when their country goes to war. Yes, they feel the pain of racism. They feel the pain of police killings of people in the streets. They feel the pain of wars, murdering and plundering people and lands and destroying their homes on the other side of the world. They just need you and I to stand up for what is right, and they'll join us. And that's been proven throughout history. The protests against the Vietnam War, for example. Are you willing to stand up and join us so that we can create a love-based future world for our children? Are you willing to join our transition movement to help save our world and all life on it? Right, that's my thing. Anyone want to chime in now?
Yeah.
Okay, Brendan.
Okay. People do know about the world needing to be refurbished in terms of naturalism, but it's like that concept that you said when you went to a club or wherever you went, to dance floor or a disco or whatever, and you were dancing like a crazy person. Nobody jumped in with you. But as soon as one person did join you, then everybody started joining because they're like, oh, he's not crazy. There's somebody else that's just as crazy as him, so let's get crazy too. So this whole concept of us starting this movement to change the world is going to take more than one of us. Basically, it's going to be a war from us to the people in power to help change their mindsets, not so much a physical war, but a mental war, to help change their mindsets and get their aspirations in the correct form and in line with our aspirations in order to change the world.
Awesome. I like both those concepts. They're pretty amazing. Yeah, it really, I mean, like, we're a small core group, and just the fact that you guys attend every week and join in the conversation. I'm not a crazy person anymore, and you are still with this crazy person, but the crowd is about to follow. And we need to believe that, because otherwise, what are we doing? Carry on, Kurt.
I agree with that. And there's a concept out there of the first follower. And sometimes people that are leading, it's hard for people to choose in to what they're experiencing until they see somebody else doing it. And then I guess there's a little protection in company. but it's also there's some validation that well, if they believed in it, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I can give it a thought or two. So that, along with I think it was Margaret Mead that said, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing it ever has, and that's pretty much what we're looking to do here. Is a small group of committed people are creating whatever waves and vibrations that other people will pick up on. We have no idea whether we'll just be a drop in the ocean or a wave in a pond. However, because we're committed to doing it, is what people will pick up on. Once they see that commitment, then they'll pick up on the content and the concept, and things will grow. So it's just a question of continuing to not only take a stand, but take a walk in the direction that we're headed.
I really like that. It's not just taking a stand; it's taking a walk in the right direction.
I just made that up, but yeah, it's not being
Genius.
complacent. It's putting it in action. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's no good talking about planting a seed unless you go and you put it in the ground, and that means you've got to get mud in between your toes and go and stick your finger in the dirt, and and then cover the hole up with dirt and water it, and and then rinse yourself down because now you're covered in mud. Yeah, it's like it's actually in the living really that life, it not only happens, that's where the magic happens. It's like you've got to get across that threshold of just being in your mind to being in the world and living it and doing it. So I love that concept. Anyone else?
I think where we ended this session is where we're at. I had mentioned to you that right at this moment, I'm sitting in a park where they're running a Heal the Planet Day, and they'll have multiple workshops. And it's to help spread the word in so many different ways, whether it's how you cycle your garbage, the food that you eat, environmentalism, volunteerism, just a variety of ways that we can continue to support the health of the planet. So then I am on this call and I am about to walk into wherever the event is nearby here and participate and actually do some documentation of the event. It's my small way of helping take the information that's in a closed place and put it for a larger audience. And that'll be with my photography, maybe my conversations that I have with people. Who knows, maybe I can share Help Save Our World to a few people that I meet today, and they'll be on in a week or two or three. But these are the kind of steps that when we are of a mind, when we set the context in our mind that this is who I am and this is what I believe, that it generates this type of actions as we move forward. And I'm the participant and a observer today so far, and we'll see how the day progresses in order to be able to put it into action. But without being a cultist or an extremist, we just get to continue to have the conversations about what's important for us. And as long as we're inviting people to understand what we're up to and why we're up to it, makes it easier for them to choose in. And I think that's what we all get to do in life, is help people join us in a worthwhile project and a worthwhile way of spending our time on the planet.
Yeah, it's actually so interesting. I was looking at that Samurai Wars, and it's basically here we have a you have a sorry, not to ignore what you just said. I absolutely love the fact that people are doing like amazing things, even in like there are good people with good ideas and good hearts and good souls that are doing amazing things. But going back to that samurai thing, basically you have these wars for 100 years where people are just killing and murdering one another, and it's absolutely insane. And somewhere along the line, they reach a point where they're like, we can do something better with this. All right. But very seldom do they really get to the point of thought and reasoning where they can do something like from the nature of the universe all the way down to like the, the growth of life and everything. It's just like this comprehensive understanding. It's as if we like work backwards. We work from destruction upwards instead of from universal understanding and like environmental understanding and everything, because what we tend to do is destroy all of our knowledge and then work from nothing, trying to build upwards. So I don't know how we could do something about that to make this like universal understanding continue. So Jeff Lawson was talking about how the Polynesians or something like that used to tattoo these the wisdom and the memories into their bodies, the bodies of, I don't know if it's the Polynesians, it's actually the Maori or that region over there, so that the history of knowledge and wisdom was passed on. So it wasn't tattoos just because I want to be an anarchist in my community or whatever. It was actually their way of etching into stone, so so there have to be ways of trying to, I think if we spread this broadly enough, that and it becomes our stories and our tales and our wisdom that we're naturally passing on through children's books and whatever, there is a chance that it might survive into the future, but it's essential knowledge,
Well, you touched on it briefly a little while ago, Dennis, but yeah, we don't know how long into the future these conversations will last, or if there will be technology to be able to reproduce this video, let's say, in even 30 or 40 years. Some of the things that technology produced just a couple of years ago, our computers can't even read anymore. They've kind of gone from that standard to something else. But one of the things that has survived, at least over the eons that I'm aware of, is storytelling. It's putting things down into a material presence. The Indians used wampum belts back eons ago. They used cave paintings and other things that we're still trying to decipher. But there are things that our senses can pick up without having to have any in between. And this is one of the dangers of technology, is we tend to rely on it so much and realize that we can't access it without something in between. Now that brings me to, I guess, a different thought, in that if we hold that we are spirits having a human experience, then we already are putting something in between knowledge and the experience, and that would be our senses, right? Our spirit inhabits our body and uses the faculties of the body in order to then communicate with the world that we live in, both receive information and send out. So whatever it is that has our spirit show up on Earth and engage with other people and leave its mark, not necessarily for posterity, but to leave it because it's the right thing to do, given our full and deep experience of being alive in this moment. We get to continue to do it, and whether it's a multifaceted way of leaving videos and leaving books, leaving PDF files, leaving scratchings on rocks in our body, we get to continue to share that there's a beautiful world, and we don't need to destroy in order to appreciate it.
Yeah, Jeff Lawson, I've been like really impressed with the work that he's doing. What he's doing is he's creating like these model sort of sustainable, examples of his work around the world. And so he's he's created longevity in the land that's around that, and the marks that he makes on the land, like putting in dams and swales and all sorts of things. And it's like, he says when he goes out to evaluate a property, he goes and he just walks around open-minded, just lets insight and intuition just come to him. And he doesn't use these words. He's like more towards a scientific way of thinking, but he allows himself to glean, like, this is where the shade falls. This is where an ideal dam would be. But it's more of like a walkabout of the Australians, you know. It's like that dream state. And there is this ancestral wisdom and knowledge and things that have happened in your environment in the past, and you intuitively pick up on them. So it's like you're reading the book of nature from all of your ancestors that had an impact on the environment in the past. And all of the environmental knowledge and things just come to you. It's like that dream state. And so, yes, I like the fact that you brought the mystical idea into it. I think it's not mystical. It's not the unknown anymore. I think we've gone so far into that. It's become the known. It's like, as we think and speak, we're radiating energy out into the universe. And this concept of action at a distance, we literally can receive that information if we just focus in on it. So just focusing in on your environment, you're just like, wow. And oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And, you know, inspirational thought just downloads. So yes, I agree that is one way of archiving our memories and so on. And we naturally do it. But not everyone lives their lives in a state of mind that they're able to access and to sit still. Like he says, sit still for days, weeks, months, sit there for a year, you know, and get a feel for the environment, get to know where the sun rises and the rain falls and what it sounds like, what it feels like, you know. If we really sat down and listened to the environment, there's so much that we could learn.
Yep.
All right, so we've come to the end of our hour. So if anyone has anything to say,
great.
Wants to say.
No, I think the greatest gift we can give the people in the future is to leave them a planet that is sustainably working. That would be a really nice legacy, rather than books and ideas and concepts and lectures, right? It's
but
have the garbage cleaned up, have the oceans cleaned up, have the skies cleaned up, and have us really living in relationship to nature, not using it as an infinite resource for our consumption.
Yeah, I agree with that. But unless what's going on in here is in tune with the way we think and the way we behave, that will never happen. It's ultimately, it starts with what's going on in here between the ears. So
have a good conversation with yourself and with nature. Yeah. Okay, Dennis, I'm going to run.
All right, Brendan, thank you, everyone.
Pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Kurt. Go well.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
have a great evening.
Cheers.
Be well.